Hi, everybody. Welcome to The New Normal. I'm your host, Lisa Davis, aka Litecoin Lisa, and today is Wednesday. Dr. McDaniel has some great information for us on longevity, so we'll be right back right after this.
Talk about a subject for the next 3 or 4 lectures that involves 100% of the population. I'm not aware of anyone that I've met that's not going to participate in the aging process, and that is the hot area in medical and biological research at this time about different areas that they have found on the globe where there are populations that a high percentage of people live to be 100 or more, and they live to this age in good health, oftentimes very active in whatever their type of their work is, and these are called the blue zones of longevity. And we will start out with my first exposure to this, which we will refer to in the first lecture. This book is Anti-Aging Medicine, and the sponsor of the conference up in the Northeast was the Mary Ann Liebert Incorporated publisher that sponsored this conference. And a chapter in this book was written by Dr. From Japan that shares with you what I will cover in this lecture about. At that time, they found out that the citizens of Okinawa lived about 10 years longer than those in Japan, and they went in to investigate why. And then we will follow up that because of this, a foundation was established in Okinawa just to study longevity in there, and they found out some things that Dr. Katani from Tokyo did not include in his lecture. But to emphasize, this is a hot topic in Epic Times, a conservative newspaper. This is about Okinawa boasts astonishing number of centenarians, which we will go into. And then in National Geographic, they have an issue here on the blue zones, the science of living longer. And this was shortly followed, but not long, about living longer and greater health. So that's what we're going to get started on, because it's such a hot topic for research, and it involves everyone. Because human beings have a finite period of living. And in our research, we have found out that the active ingredient from aloe vera, Ace Manning, or acetylated mannose, is getting changes in biomarkers and in biochemistry that various multiple studies of showing benefits, that they're all incorporated in aloe Ace Manning. So with that, we'll start with the lecture. Thank you. Now, this will be the first slide that we will have on this coming lectures. And it's the World Health Organization, often just called WHO, has found places on Earth where the population of people living to 90 to over 100 years is common. And the remarkable thing is oftentimes they're in good health and don't have the typical degenerative diseases associated with aging. And this lecture will focus on a conference in 1996 that I was invited to, that we will go to the second slide. In 1996, this conference was sponsored, and this is about the Okinawan Blue Zone that was identified after World War II, when those nations that have government-sponsored health have everybody in their computer, and they realize that the Okinawan population was living about 10 years longer than the extended life of people that lived on the main island in Japan. In this book, we'll, in the future, cover some experiments that we had a chapter in this book with members from Texas A&M School of Veterinary Medicine, but that's not what we will focus on, the chapter that's in this book. It will be this current direction of research in anti-aging medicine, an overview by Kenichi Katani, MD, from the Radioisotope Research Institute in the Faculty of Medicine in Tokyo. This is what caused a team to go to Okinawa from this university. The green lines are, the top one is females in Okinawa, and if you'll notice, compared to the Netherlands, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, Switzerland, that you had people living up into the 90s in Japan. And below is the males that were living longer than anyone else. And in fact, when they got there, they found out that they were finding individuals 90 plus years of age in good health, fishing or farming, working 8 to 10 hours a day, and in good health. And they scratch their heads and says, how in the world could this be going on in these islands? And the most remarkable things that diseases associated with aging were low incidence, and they wanted to know why. So this team from the Institute of Longevity in Tokyo proceeded to the Okinawan Islands to analyze it. And what they found out is in this article that I showed you from the book, that the people in Okinawa were primarily fishermen and farmers, and they ate brown rice and buckwheat. Whole wheat is the important thing, that it had the biopolymer covering of the seed on it, which is unique in the covering for brown rice and for wheat that is has the covering on it, protects the little embryo inside of it, the next generation of the plant. And there is a food supply provided in the cotyledons of the seed to nourish the embryo to form the first taproot and the first leaf, and then photosynthesis is turned on. The significant thing is that over the decades, they've found out this protection of the food supply and the little embryo and the seed, when you have the seed coat there, can be piggybacked by any animal that eats it. And of course, human beings get that benefit. And this is one of the things they found in Okinawa. The white rice is more expensive, and white flour is more expensive because of the additional processing. And that's what was eaten primarily and sold on the mainland of Japan. And it was kind of a social thing, that kind of a superior, snooty attitude, that coolies and farm people eat brown rice. We eat white rice and white flour, and they wouldn't be caught on the mainland buying brown rice and buckwheat. Another thing they found out is that everybody drank tea. And the tea that they drank on Okinawa was called Sinichi tea, and it was made from mature leaves of the tea plants. And the people that harvest the leaves go out and they have hooked to their side a large bag and also a small bag at their waist. The leaves at the top of the plant, which are young leaves that are called, I don't know how to pronounce, Gyokuro, I guess it's Gaikura tea, is made from young leaves, and it's a green tea, and it is much milder than the other leaves because they, with their hands, pick the leaves off the top, put in the small thing for the more expensive tea, but then with the long sleeve shirt, they strip the leaves that are more mature off and put in the big bag to make the Sinichi tea, which is the more mature leaves, and it has more of a bitter taste. And by assaying these two different teas, they found out that the more mature leaves contain the phytonutrients that the tea plant makes that are more concentrated and present in the lower priced tea versus the young leaves, which are primarily sold to Japanese on the mainland. Also, the people had fish in their diet, and less common, they had pork, and they had many plant matured vegetables and fruit. They did not pick vegetables and fruit when they were green, put them in the kitchen and let them sit there until they started turning to color. No, they let them mature on the plant, which allowed the genes in the plant to put the phytonutrients that the fruits and vegetables make that are only put in as the plant begins to mature with the produce on the plant. And when in more modern areas where there's developed agriculture to bring in fruits and vegetables to the markets, they frequently pick them when they are green, so they'll have a shipping life and a shelf life. And that's before the plant genes put these vital nutrients that are used and called for in the DNA code of life that operates cellular synthesis in all the cells of these individuals. And so they're getting phytonutrients that are not as common in more urban areas. And another thing which is very important, we are finding more and more, is that on Okinawa, most of the people were either farmers or fishermen, and they had physical exercise and would labor up into their 90s. And this is what, in this article in 1996, was offered is why the Okinawans eventually would be called a blue zone. Now, when I made a tour of Japan from one end to the other, giving lectures on the power of more comprehensive nutrition, in Tokyo, I had an audience of the Okinawan research team, and I put together my talk that here in your country, you have been able in the past to show how important diet is as a health modality that led to longevity, and that we're just a continuation or expansion of this. And I frequently say that the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act that was passed in the United States has revealed that there are conditions that are corrected by plant matured phytochemicals that did not exist when we had family gardens and orchards in the United States. It was an agrarian population, and nobody picked their fruits and vegetables green. They allowed them to ripen on the vine. And so that was an effort to try to communicate with them that we just carrying on further with Dr. Katani's research in that team. Well, then I was found out that Dr. Katani had deceased, and his predecessor after the lecture called me over and in a low voice and privately said that our latest findings are that we lost the war and we won in Japan fried chicken, pizzas, hot dogs, and hamburgers, and that the young Okinawans no longer are living longer than mainland Japanese because their dietary habits have greatly been altered by what happened with the commercialization of the various fast foods that came into Japan after World War II. I want to relate this that the modern science is validating the ancient wisdom and insight that is found in the blue zones. Now, Hippocrates, who is credited with being the father of Western medicine, lived from, he was born in about 460 BC and died in 375 BC. And we have there where he was born and where he died. And you can go to Outlook on your computer and look for sayings and quotations of Hippocrates, and you will find one of them there. In fact, there's quite a list of them. And I want to quote this one that I think is so important to emphasize that personally I tell people that you give me a lot of credit for this development of these lectures on more comprehensive nutrition, but that I have invented nothing. I've not come up with anything new, that this is ancient wisdom and insight that in fact is technology as old as life itself. And this period of time of Hippocrates, which is before our calendar even started, he wrote, if we could provide the patient with optimal nutrition and exercise, common, not too much, not too little, we have provided the safest path to good health. And then beneath this, he wrote something that I've heard many times, and possibly you have too, let your food be your medicine and your medicine your food. If you recall in the lectures on the vitamins, that Dr. St. Georgie said a vitamin is a nutrient molecule that if you don't have it in your diet, you will develop a deviation from normal health. And what we have found that pharmaceuticals, for the most part, do not solve this problem. In fact, it may make it better, but you have toxicities and side effects with all these drugs. Again, in ancient wisdom, Paracelsus is credited as being the father of Western pharmacology, most noted person in science from Switzerland. And his most famous statement was, quote, all drugs are poisons. The benefit depends on the dose. And so what we have found is that in nutrition, you have molecules that the code in DNA that's in the chromosomes of all animals, including humans, that in the nature in the food or the plants that can serve as food, are the molecules that are required in cellular synthesis to make bioactive compounds that run the biochemistry of life. And with the biochemistry of life, with its function, you get into the physiology of life. And these micronutrients are phytonutrients. They're made and present only in vine ripened fruits and vegetables that ripen on the plant, contain these molecules that the genes call for to make these compounds to have optimal health. So this is the end of this presentation on 1996 in the state of the earliest indications that there are blue zones, and it was noted first in Okinawa, and we citizens, and we covered what this research group found. We're going.
It's very interesting how they tied it back to food and lifestyle. So much of it, and even what their food was eating, and back to the phytonutrients. So that research, I think, was really, really valuable for everybody. Thanks for joining us, Dr. McDaniel. More information. So right now we're doing a raw food reboot with my friends all on that joined me on my Monday show. And it's been a little bit of a challenge because we all got off alcohol, caffeine. So there's some withdrawals from the caffeine for sure. We're all on day 4. And that's been challenging. And then looking into, we're doing raw foods. So vegetables, there were some, I'm trying something tonight. I made a recipe that I found online with sprouted beans, because, and you mentioned it in the the lecture just now, talking about how you have to sprout the bean. They were talking about in the buckwheat or in the rice, even some of those beans and rice, they have the little protective layer around them, and they have to be introduced to water to allow that embryo to sprout, and then that makes it not dangerous for us to eat. So it'll be interesting to see how chewy my beans are going to be, not having them cooked in a traditional way. But we're trying new things, trying to try some healthy things. So I'm curious if you have some advice for us on our reboot.
Well, I wanted to make the point that in our society, we are a drug-oriented society, both legitimate and illegal drugs, that there is a common belief that if you've got any problem, there's some drug for it.
Right.
And that is promoted by the sickness and the drug industry. And that's unfortunate because, as I quoted from Paracelsus, and I was asked twice to go to Belgium for a dietary supplement company in London because they were rewriting the law, or establishing the laws for the European Common Market that would regulate drugs and dietary supplements. And my position is that the definitions and the rules that exist are all crony capitalism and are not really factually oriented. Fact is, the research that was started in 1985 that I was brought in to be a medical consultant for Carrington Laboratories was that they raised $20 million to do research to develop a new drug from the active ingredient from the aloe vera leaf gel plant. Aloe vera leaf gel had a history that went back up to 5,000 years, that different societies had used it to support improvement in health. And I was very reticent to get involved because as a kid on the farm in Abbott, Texas, my mother always kept an aloe plant in the kitchen. You'd break a leaf off and rub it on chigger bites or mosquito bites or
Right.
or
Kitchen burns. Yeah, I have one in my kitchen now.
think of it for something for the skin. And here there was a company about 10 miles from me sitting right here in Grand Prairie, Texas, that had 12 products made from aloe vera leaf gel, and one of them was a beverage, but the other products were primarily for the skin. And the idea that the aloe leaf gel beverage could be a very health supporting entity was kind of foreign to me, to say the least, because I had a double major in college in chemistry and in biology. I did about 2 years on a graduate degree, trying to get either a master's or a doctorate in cellular physiology, the PhD type uh, educational track, and I didn't complete that. I went through medical school and 2 residencies and practiced for pathology in the hospital for 30 years, and I had never heard of aloe being of any value for health.
Right.
And I was very skeptical when this individual came to me and said he had this beverage that was called Carolo, and he had from 7 different states. And that's very important that the anecdotal report were from multiple sites, that individuals that had at the time he came to me in 1984-85, was at the peak of the panic in society over the AIDS epidemic.
Mhm.
Well, these were all AIDS patients, and they said they drank the aloe beverage and they had been on their deathbeds, and they were able to get up, go back to work or go to school, and they had very few symptoms now, and told the company that thought you'd want to know it. And he came to me asking for help as a medical doctor and as a laboratorian, as a pathologist. Well, I told him no. I thought it was ludicrous, and quite frankly, as I look back, I had forgotten some of the history of the vitamin era. Uh, Vitamin C that was found in citrus fruit was effective to prevent and to reverse and to get over a lethal disease called scurvy. And Dr. James Lynn, a graduate of the Medical School of Edinburgh, Scotland, had conducted the first clinical study ever reported to be done on the deck of His Majesty's ship, the Salisbury, and that he had different groups, that everything that was rumored to be good for scurvy was tried, and the only group that improved were those that got lemon juice. And this is to this day why the British Navy individuals are frequently called limeys, because they
Mm-hmm.
found out that limes and lemons prevented, and this contributed probably significantly to the fact that the British Empire is the largest empire that was ever existed, that human beings have created, because their sailors on the ships on the 7 seas and their settlers that they sent out didn't get scurvy. But before James Lynn, 2 million British sailors had died from scurvy. And after he discovered this, they didn't lose any of them. Well, I had forgotten that. And finally, I kept telling them I wouldn't participate in this aloe vera leaf gel research. And they came in with a individual that handled all the paperwork for the FDA, and they had all the forms and all. And so, meeting all the criteria for standard middle of the road science, I finally decided that I would do a pilot study for them. And in the New England Journal of Medicine, I found an article on staging of AIDS that was written by Robert Redfield. He was a young doctor at that time at hospital for veterans in Washington, D.C. And if you may recall that name at all, he was head of the CDC, or the Disease for Communicable Disease, under the Trump administration as a more mature physician. Well, he wrote this paper on staging of AIDS, and we took that paper and the different criteria on it and applied it not one time, but about every 2 weeks to a month to 15 patients, doing all the criteria that the FDA required. And lo and behold, I was doing this to show them that the aloe leaf gel beverage couldn't do what they were reporting, that it was a hoax or fluke. Well, these patients improved on all these criteria of Dr. Redfield, about 72% in 90 days. As I frequently say, those were results that changed the course of my life. And here it is 36 years later, and I'm talking to you about the active ingredients from the aloe vera. And in fact, at that time, they raised the $20 million and got contracts with 12 different academic institutions to do research on contract, to do everything the FDA wanted. And my job was, because these were non-scientist administrators that ran the company, was to interpret this scientific basic science data that the FDA required for them. What does this mean? And also to project what this could do for benefits. Well, today we talked about longevity. We found out that this active ingredient from aloe does a whole lot more than boost the body's protection or host defense against the AIDS virus. Fact is, we found out that every virus that they had at Texas A&M School of Veterinary Medicine in various animals, that it protected the animal from getting the virus infection. If the animal already had the virus infection, it immediately stopped and the symptoms would improve. And in tissue culture, we were able to show with the cells of that animal that the virus proteins were rapidly removed from the body if they had the active ingredient from the aloe in their diet. And this was what I'm getting around to because of all my training and education. It took me about 2 years to recognize we were actually in the area of nutrition, because all of my thoughts were just like our society on drugs. There's a drug for everything that you got a problem with. Well, the most amazing thing is that the requirements of our genes that control cellular synthesis in the cells of our body. There's a little assembly line in every cell in the human body that takes amino acids, fatty acids, and carbohydrate units, which are either sugars or other name for them, monosaccharides, hooks them together under the control of the DNA and the genes with the elements and vitamins and special molecules that are in the plants that are called phytonutrients that finish off the structure for the compounds that conduct the biochemistry of life. That this molecule from the aloe plant, the academicians found out that in the second stage of cellular synthesis, 9 molecules of the acetylated mannose made in the aloe leaf gel are hooked together in 3 chains to make a domain on the surface membrane of every cell in the body, and that this domain has the function to carry out instructions to all the cells and to foster harmony. in balance within all the cells. And that's why it's so effective that now we find out, even when you take it, that it is important into not only reducing infections of any type, not only viruses, but bacteria, fungus, tuberculosis, and even we got reports in children that were getting this in Africa, that chronic malaria, they quit having episodic fever and chills. Their blood picture smears, the little parasites inside their red cells, couldn't find them anymore. They got out of bed, went back to school, began to grow, and eventually we found out they excelled in athletics. And this harmony between all the cells is an extremely powerful expression of more comprehensive nutrition, because nothing happens in the body physically, mentally, or emotionally unless it's a compound that is dictated by the genes to allow this to happen in our physiology. And actually, a company that I was a medical director for a decade, most of the distributors in it were baby boomers, but they had parents that were old, 70 and older. And the natural thing of this company was everybody in their family, they got them on these products, which included the active ingredient from the aloe. And elderly patients that had given up many different tasks, like no longer played golf, no longer played tennis, quit square dancing, quit driving the car. They couldn't handle the traffic. They quit traveling because of schedules and all. And by adding this to their diet, they went back to all these activities.
Yeah, getting out and being active and part of the world again.
And right now, some research is just starting that taking and adding the aloe, like we were talking about in Okinawa, that the gold standard at the present time in these people that live to be 100 or 90 plus have long caps on the end of their chromosomes called telomeres.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at this point, we haven't finished the study, but the active ingredient from the aloe, through this apparent domain for harmony among all the cells, influences the telomere length, and it's lengthened for people. And in the literature, you find out in families and in animals that have short lifespans, they have short telomeres. In families of people that die from different diseases between, say, 55 and 70, versus those like we're on the island of Okinawa that we presented today, that they find people 90 years old living independently, needing no help from anybody, working 8 hours a day, either on the farm or fishing. And many of them, the fact is, in Okinawa now, the next lecture we will give in Okinawa, they have more people living over to 100 years than any other place. And so that's why we're doing several different lectures on aging, because it's 100% of the population. I haven't met anybody yet that is not going to participate in the aging process. And there's another little benefit that the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, does not classify aging as a disease or syndrome, which they prevent anybody from making any claims to improve health, but they don't include aging as a disease or syndrome. So it should be a subject that you can do research on and tell people about it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of the background to this. It took me about 2 years to realize we were not in the pharmaceutical paradigm, that what we were doing was supplying molecules that are no longer in the urban food chain, that we
Mhm.
plowed up our gardens and our orchards, and food is harvested and shipped into markets, and they tend to pick it green when chlorophyll is a major molecule in the plant, because the plant genes don't start putting phytonutrients that the genes call for, these compounds that are being made in the fruits and vegetables. It has to be on the plant to mature for the genes to do it. So, but when you pick it green for increased shelf life and shipping, it's before the fruits and vegetables have these vital molecules our genes call for. And that's why frozen food and freshly canned food has more nutrient value in it to supply what our genes require than some of the nice looking fresh vegetables that were picked green when you go down to the market.
That's really interesting because, like I said, we're doing this raw food reboot and we're trying to get the most nutrition. So, in my black bean salsa, I used frozen corn. I tried to use like different things through the education that you've taught us. And I also was listening to another YouTube channel, and they were talking about nutrition, talking about different things. And they were talking, and I can't remember what company, but there's a company that has the patent on flash freezing in from the orchard to bring the fresh vegetables to market. I can't remember if it was Bird's Eye or
Birdseye was his
is
name
it
that
Bird's Eye is the first
all
one?
this.
Okay. And I thought about that and I was like, okay, so there is value in some of those things and sharing that information um, with people, because it is about getting the nutrition to us. And that's why using New Eden, especially doing this raw food reboot, I think it's helped given me kind of a leg up because I'm still getting all the nutrition. And I know one of the things that we talked about personally when we email and talk with each other, and you've mentioned it on the videos, people want to know, what this is going to do for them. And I got through a conversation with a dear friend that I do a project with. He's using New Eden, and he's only been using it for a short time, just a few weeks, less than a month. And he has a significant, what do we use? What's the term? Deviant from normal in his health issue. Um, uh, am I saying that right?
That's right. You learned
dancing
it.
dancing around all those words.
Yeah.
Deviation from normal. And
Now you can
he,
tell his symptoms.
yeah. So his symptoms are that. Uh,
I'll
what would
give you
it?
an example. You can't, it's against the law to say anything that's not a drug is a benefit for diabetes. But you
Okay.
can say that this person has a deviation from health because they have high blood sugars.
Okay.
And
I wouldn't even know how to say this.
yeah, and
Um,
by eating certain foods and vegetables,
yeah.
particularly vegetables diet, tends to lower or make the sugar levels more normal.
Yeah. This
And
person has issues of um, nerve problems or becoming stiff or frozen at times.
can't feel things or feel numb or
Yeah,
move.
feeling numb or can't feel things or becoming stiff or frozen in movement. It's pretty significant deviation from normal, and just within a few weeks has found a significant change. And so it was dramatic to have that talk with him, and just really feels good when you feel like you can help a friend by sharing nutrition information you know and
And the
so I
nice
can't
thing is
imagine.
there's no downside on it. If you listen to the advertisement on TV, they'll, in the first part of the ad about this new wonderful miracle drug, they have beautiful people beautiful colors and music, and then all of a sudden it goes black and white, and they talk as fast as they can to tell you this stuff will
How
cause
dangerous it
strokes,
is.
heart attacks,
Yes.
bone marrow failure, kidney failure. Those are the toxicities that Paracelsus, the father of pharmacology, pointed out, that all drugs are
Yeah.
poisons. And
Yeah.
that's when I went to Belgium, pointed out that the big difference between nutrition and pharmaceuticals was that pharmaceuticals interfere with engineering and design of life to reduce symptoms, make you feel better, but they do not address the cause, whereas nutrients are utilized in cellular synthesis to move the body to the normal zone. And in the normal zone, you don't have symptoms. And so that's the power of it. In fact, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 94 has a preamble, which the first paragraph, I paraphrase, says medicine and science has determined that optimal nutrition is essential for good health, to prevent disease, and to restore health, period. And you could quite quickly say, well, what else would you want?
Right.
Well, I can tell you right quickly, you would like for it not to only be in the preamble, because it's just a statement that's put at the front end of the legislation of why they had hearings and even considered this legislation. It is not law. In the Dietary Supplement Act, in the labeling section, and I paraphrase again, it says only a government approved pharmaceutical from the FDA can represent or claim to treat a disease or syndrome or ameliorate an abnormal and correct an abnormal health condition. You got to be a pharmaceutical or one of the, as Paracelsus says, the poisons. And whereas nutrients are used by the genes and the wisdom that's incorporated inside the body to correct the problem. And that's why it's so powerful. And there's virtually no downside. Fact is, people say their fingernails grow faster, their hair thicker. We even had bald-headed people start having growing hair again.
Yeah.
And some of the happiest people have what is called alopecia universalis. They have no hair on the body anywhere, no eyelashes, no eyebrows. I met people that they've started growing eyelashes and eyebrows, and you talk about happy people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have a friend that has that as well, and I'm hoping that they have those same results. So, you know, I just think there's a lot of things with this nutrition in the presentation that you just did on this video you're talking about, and it made so much sense how, they would pick the larger leaves, the more mature leaves for the tea for them, because and those were the unwanted tea leaves, I guess, and the younger, more uh gentle, I guess, tea leaves were the ones that they would sell, for the people that were more wealthy, and they would make tea out of that. But the ones that had actually more nutrition were the more mature leaves, because they had soaked up more of, if you think about it, all of our, the energy comes from the sun, and that's comes through the leaves of the tree, through um, that green light of life that you've talked about previously as well. And I think about how my mom's taught me, some things about gardening and all of that. And she always says, leave the leaves on as long as you can before you trim them back, because that's how that gives the roots able to get the nutrition to grow. They receive nutrition through those leaves by gathering light through the leaves, so that the roots can grow through the winter, for the next spring. So you don't want to cut the leaves off too early. You want them to grow to full maturity, um, so that the roots will be stronger and can have more bulbs next year, whether we're talking about an iris or, whatever plant. So that
Well,
makes so much sense.
I assume we don't have any questions, and I need to get to working on the next lecture.
Yes, yes, yes. I don't have any questions. I've got a lot of people in the chat that are kind of our regulars, and I think are already using New Eden. Um, but I wanted to thank you for sharing this information. So we'll have a longevity. We'll have a couple episodes on longevity and the telomeres. You guys, I know that a lot of you are familiar with the telomere conversation, and we've had that on with a couple other friends. So if you have some of those questions, please let us know about that. You can find my link to New Eden and to wellnessquest.org, where you can find more information from Dr. McDaniel there. And we will see you guys next time here on The New Normal. Everyone take care and have a great night.
Blessings to everyone.
Take care.